Um, so I mean, you seem like you're pretty well set in like this career or like enjoying it, but like would you ever consider making a transition from radio to TV or
No, TV is while we do dabble with video and we
yeah.
try to find interesting ways to do things on video to kind of basically I view television and the video content that we do as a way to complement what we do on the radio.
Hmm.
So, for instance, curling, right? Curling with the Olympics, whatever. It's one thing to talk about
Yeah.
curling. It's another with, hey, we went to the Triangle Curling Club and we tried it. We could talk about it,
Yeah.
but it doesn't really, it's a visual thing.
Yeah.
So for the people who listen to the show and consume our stuff, this is an added component to what we already do. So, hey, they were talking about curling the other day and here they are trying it. So that's where there's a payoff with dabbling with videos. You can't be shy about it. But sports on television, it's too constricted,
Hmm.
where we get anywhere between 10 to 15 minutes to flesh out ideas and hit multiple topics.
Yeah.
You do television, you have, if you're lucky, 90 seconds. And you have to be very, very concise with
Yeah.
what you're saying rather than having the freedom to kind of go about the conversation in a much more natural way. So, um, you know, it's, you do 4 hours of radio, it's kind of like a batting weight whereas 30 minutes of
Yeah.
television, there's more preparation time that gets put into 30 minutes of television than the actual 30 minutes of television.
Right.
I don't like that. Like
Hmm.
I just don't I don't see the payoff for that.
Yeah.
Whereas you're working everything out on the air live.
Yeah. Having a full conversation.
You're having the full conversation rather than, doing something that lasts 30 minutes and you're out. So, not to say that I
Yeah.
mean it's a different kind of difficulty.
Yeah.
It's not one that I like. So,
Okay.
that's why. And play by play or something like that I have zero interest in because that's hard. Play by play is
Yeah.
hard. Okay, because essentially, if I try to do play by play, I'd be like that kid from a few years ago that did Boom Goes to Dynamite. Like I wouldn't know. Like,
Yeah.
who was that? He passes it to that guy. And he shoots a shot. No, there's no way, no way.
Kind of making a transition. Like, just what was your college major?
So when I went to state, I thought I was going to do computer science.
Hmm.
My grades weren't good enough to get into the College of Engineering, but I went into the first year of college when that was a pilot program at the
Yeah.
time. That's how old I am. So when I got into the first year of college, I was doing all the computer science stuff, but I quickly realized that this just was not. While I found technology and programming interesting, I thought I would hate just living the rest of my life in front of a computer terminal writing
Yeah.
code. So I transitioned out of that. But what always kept me interested was working at WKNC, which is
Right.
a college radio station, and I really enjoyed that. I enjoyed the people that I met and being around. I liked radio,
Yeah.
so it's not something that when I first started working at KNC, I thought it would be something that I would do for a living. I
Right.
thought it would just something I was just kind of checking something off a list of things I've always wanted to do. So here we are doing radio. To by the time I got to my senior year at NC State, that's all I was focused on. Even
Right.
though I transitioned over to the College of Management
Hmm.
to do management information systems, essentially the management version of the programming, where I wasn't going deep
Right.
into the coding. I would basically be positioning myself to manage those people. But I never pursued it. I basically threw it into radio and
Yeah.
worked it out.
So are there any classes you wish you had taken to like better prepared you for the path you've taken now, or
No, because I think that you know it's not a knock on broadcast schools necessarily
yeah.
because those serve their own purposes,
Hmm.
but I do think for my job specifically, it's good to have other perspective.
Right.
That if this is all you ever do, you're not really going to gain any sort of perspective to what is a common person,
Yeah.
or I think it's interesting that if you were a history major, we worked with somebody that was a history major. They got into radio, and that added a different perspective because they knew all this stuff. We also used to work with somebody who was an econ major, so that perspective has helped him in certain subjects as it relates to labor manage. Like the money that goes into the sport, payrolls, all that stuff. So I think if you broadcast, I get the whole point, but I do think sometimes for what we do specifically, that might not be the best way of going about it.
So if you could go back and give your 20-year-old self any advice before going into this field, what would it be? Kind of a tough question.
Let's see. Give myself any advice when I was 20 years old. Jeez. I don't know, Adam. You knew me when I was 20, so what would I do? What should I do when I was 20? I'm trying to think here.
Cut out Coke.
I did that.
Cut out sodas.
I did cut out sodas.
That would be good advice.
I did cut out sodas. Fat Joe didn't like that, or liked that back in the day. Yeah, that's a good question. The only, you know, you got me on this one because things have worked out. So I'm trying to think, like, well, what can I do differently? I guess the only thing that I would say to do differently is not to be so stubborn about certain things.
Yeah.
Because what you end up finding out is that there are certain battles that that are worth, putting your foot down on,
Yeah.
and others that are so trivial that in the grand scheme it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
And I've argued on particular aspects of the job over, something as silly as the music that we play that would get me in arguments.
Yeah.
And I'm like, then to myself, I'm like, you know what? Why? It's fun. It's whatever. It's such a minuscule thing, a part of
Yeah.
the show. Why should I do that?
Right.
So there's a little bit that would probably be the whole thing is just pick your battles for certain things. So
That's a good answer. So what would you say the next step in your career is, or what is the next major goal for you that you would want to accomplish?
The next major thing is the thing that we're actually in the process of doing right now, and that is just making sure that the show is, to use a buzzy term, scalable.
Mhm.
Okay. That whatever happens on the radio show is able to be scaled into different platforms that we can turn. I'll give you an example. We talked to the New Canes owner a couple of weeks ago. He wanted to come in the studio, and he had some interesting things to say about, like, the Whalers, right?
Yeah.
And because the radio audience was served, but once it goes out to the radio audience, it's ephemeral, like it goes away.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have to be. We've
Mhm.
just produced the content. So you have to take what happened. It was running on video, and you put that on our website so it stays forever.
Right.
That if people missed it, like, oh, did you hear what Dundon said about the whale? No. Well, here it is. It gets turned around into content. It got picked up by ESPN, what we said on the radio. Had it just lived in the air and vanished, then nobody ever, ESPN would have been able to pick up on it. It would have been, oh, they said that? Well, I can't go with it. So that's the next goal, is to make sure that whatever the next change is, the iPhone is 10 years old, and it's changed
Yeah.
so much of how we consume content that eventually it's going to get to us if it hasn't already. It's changed television.
Right.
It's changed print. Radio will be changed too. And right now, the last stronghold for radio is the car. But eventually, the car is going to give way to connected devices, just like your house has given way to connected devices.
Mhm.
So, the goal is to make sure that we're still doing things and making it accessible for people that if they want to continue engaging with the show, they can.
Mhm.
So that is making sure that we're available in podcast form, video form. We have an app. That's stuff that in the next 5 years, if companies and radio shows don't have their act together, they're going to be left behind. They're going to be playing
Yeah.
catch up. So that's the immediate goal right now, which I think we're doing a good job of, but it's a constant state of continuing to do it. But after that 5 years, man, I don't even know. I hope I still have my hair. That's all I care about.
So who would you say is the biggest or most famous guest I guess you've ever had on your show?
It would probably be Barack Obama.
Really?
Yeah, but he was a candidate at the time. He actually came on twice.
Oh, wow.
2 or 3 times.
It was twice, I think. The first time I was not there for because my first child was born that morning.
Oh, that makes sense. Yeah.
So yeah. But it did produce a really cool moment where Obama, as a senator at the time, as a candidate, gave a shout out to Caleb. So that was pretty slick.
He did.
That's awesome.
And then the second time he was as a candidate, He actually was the nominee
Mhm.
at that point. So that's easily the most famous one. But we've talked to. I'm trying to think if there's anybody else that would be of that. Like I've kind of like geeked out over. I'm trying to think. It's probably Barry Sanders was the next one that I probably really geeked out over.
Yeah,
At the Super Bowl Radio Row, we talked Tecmo Bowl. Adam was it was more important for Adam to meet Daryl Strawberry than it was for me. That would be Adam's answer. Would be talking to Daryl Strawberry. But Obama's the easy